Okay, we're doing quotes here from the book Holy Grail of Wisdom Quotes by me, Pete Rogers. We're on the letter H. We're doing Hippocrates and then some quotes about history. So Hippocrates was a great Greek physician, the father of Western medicine, another first for the Greeks to sort of have what we would call a higher sophisticated level of medicine. He said, if someone wishes for good health, they must first ask themselves if they are willing to do away with the things that cause their illness. Only then is it possible to help them. Yeah, just like in the USA today with chronic Western diseases, in my experience, about 95% of patients will not comply with a low-fat vegan diet. You know, they'll do a little here and there, but that's usually not enough. As you get older, you get more fragile. There's multiple reasons why your body's immune system and overall health is weakening, and you need to really make a dramatic change to turn things around. Okay, he continues. Illnesses do not come out of the blue. They typically come from small daily sins against nature. When enough small sins have accumulated, the disease appears. If you are not your own doctor, then you are a fool. Illnesses do not come on us out of the blue. Okay, we just did that one. One must study nutrition if one wants to understand the diseases of man. All disease begins in the gut. Just as bad food causes most chronic disease, good food can be the most powerful cure. If someone wishes for good health, okay, and we repeated that one. Life is short and the art is long. Physicians are very many in title, but few in reality. The physician treats, but nature heals. Wherever the art of medicine is loved, there is also love of humanity. Now, I think that's a good one. Where humanity is loved, that's where you're going to have the real art of medicine. Because people don't understand it, because, the average American's so hopelessly stupid. They don't even understand. The medical system hates their guts, okay? And so you don't want to walk into a system that hates you. Because if you have to go to it, you go to it, but you go to it with a skeptical mind and you see, how can I get some benefit from this? You don't just randomly walk into it like a moron, okay? And dentistry is even worse. I'm sorry to say it, but it is. Okay, Hippocrates. To do nothing is sometimes a great remedy. It is more important to know what person has the disease than what disease the person has. Yeah, like the average person thinks, oh, I'm going to get robotic surgery and all this fancy drugs and therapies, and they think that's high-tech, sophisticated medicine. To me, that's primitive. That's animal medicine. What I mean by that is you can take a pill and get a dog to eat it, okay? You can't teach a pill the low-fat vegan diet. You can't teach a dog how to sleep better, how to exercise more, how to avoid toxins. So what I'm trying to say is the people don't understand. They think they're behaving intelligently, but they're behaving stupidly. It's kind of frustrating to see all these people. I've been a doctor for all these years, and it's like they don't want to get better. There's only one thing that'll cure them, and they don't want to do it. So it's like, okay, have fun. Plenty of residents will have fun drugging you and, operating on you. Go ahead, be a chump. Okay, Hippocrates, walking is the best medicine. Natural forces within us are the true healers of disease. Health is the greatest of human blessings. The doctor should first do no harm. Primum non nocere. Let food be thy medicine. Okay, that's Hippocrates, the great ancient Greek physician. Now we're going to do some history, quotes about history. Numbers and dates have no soul. History should be told as stories about people. Yeah, it's very easy to remember history when you learn it as a biography, because you can remember that person and some of the big events in their life, On the other hand, the way history is taught in schools, and they do it this way deliberately, is to memorize a bunch of dates, and people don't remember that. Most people remember almost nothing from that. If history were taught in the form of stories, it would never be forgotten. Rudyard Kipling. Historical novels are the best way of teaching history. Louis L'Amour. Yeah, you want to read about Poland, read Poland by Michener, historical novel. It's great. You want to learn about the history of Ireland, read Trinity, okay, by Leon Uris. It's great. Those types of books really help you remember. Thomas Carlyle. The history of the world is but the biography of great men. That's sort of the great man theory of history. Norman Cousins. History is a vast early warning system. There's a lot of truth in that. What ends up happening is if you read history and you read the Bible, then things make sense. But if you don't read history and you don't read the Bible, then you're like a moron. But morons don't even know that they're morons, so it's hard to teach them anything. James Joyce, history is a nightmare I'm trying to awake from. Yeah, the Irish got abused by the British for over 1,000 years. Oscar Wilde, anybody can make history, but only a great man can write it. That's a little bit like the idea that, oh, it took, Gibbons to write the history of Rome. It took Carlyle to write other histories, like of France. Henry Ford, most history is bunk. And the reason he'd say something like that is a lot of history is just fake history. It's written by somebody with a political goal. Edmund Burke, those who do not know history are doomed to repeat it. All that is necessary for evil to triumph is that good men do nothing. Okay, Winston Churchill, the farther you can look back, the farther back you can look, the farther forward you are likely to see. Yeah, there's truth in that. Lots of stuff is just a repeat of stuff that happened in ancient Greece and ancient Rome, except with more modern technology. Study history. In history lie all the secrets of statecraft. Winston Churchill. If you do not know history, then you do not know anything. You are like a leaf that doesn't know it is part of a tree. Michael Crichton, the American writer. He's the guy who wrote Jurassic Park. Cicero, to not know what happened before you were born is to forever remain a child. Robert Heinlein, a generation which ignores its history has no future. So that's what I worry about. The younger generation has been so dumbed down. Who is going to continue Western civilization if they don't know it? And there's these push by politicians to not have humanities taught in the schools anymore. That's a big mistake. All of this stuff is highly valuable to developing the ability to think and to discern truth from nonsense. Henry David Thoreau, books are carriers of civilization. Without books, history is silent. Yeah, you can't write history unless you got books about that time. And in general, you'll go through, stupid phases of history, but if the books are there, smart people will eventually, if they can get a hold of those books, they'll read them and they'll make sense of stuff again. Like the Irish saved civilization by preserving the books from ancient Greece and ancient Rome. Christopher Columbus, you can never cross the ocean unless you have the courage to lose sight of the shore. Voltaire, history is only a register of the crimes and misfortunes. That sounds a little bit like Schopenhauer said, if you just read the history of all the wars and the battles and the power struggles, it's kind of depressing because you see how violent and cruel humans are. On the other hand, if you read the history of art and real scientific achievement, it's kind of beautiful and uplifting. So it depends where the focus is. Okay, Dwight Eisenhower, he says, history does not long entrust the care of freedom to the weak or the timid. Yeah, that's why man's been feminized and wimpified so that he could be destroyed. When men are ready to fight, they're like a hydra. They're not so easy to destroy. Burckhardt, history is the record of what one age finds worthy in another. Hodgson, the writing on the wall may be a forgery. Yeah, a lot of historical writing is bogus. But with time and experience and knowing other things, you can make sense of it most of the time. The main work of a historian is not to record, but to evaluate. For if he does not evaluate, how can he know what is worth recording? Yeah, there's always too much information, so the historian has to study as much of it as he can and then make sense of it. So he has to choose. So it's inevitable that there's going to be some bias. There always is. Written history is largely the glorification of the iniquities of the triumphant. Yeah, like a good example is Abraham Lincoln. He was a total evil warmonger scumbag who did awful, awful things bad for the United States. But because he won the war, they rewrite the history books to make it look like he's some type of great hero. He was bad. He was a criminal, man. Okay, I told you about the book about him by Lorenzo, The Real Lincoln. Okay, George Orwell. History is written by the winners. The most effective way to destroy a people is to deny and obliterate their own understanding of their own history. Yeah, well, isn't that what they do in the public schools to make people think America's bad, racist, slave country? They don't understand. America's the greatest country ever existed in the history of the world. It has the best founding fathers ever in the history of the world. It was founded based on Christianity, which got rid of slavery. That's America. Okay, slavery still exists in all the main continents. It still exists even in the USA, only under the guise of the left. Okay, the left, traffics, the kids. Okay, but it still exists in Africa. It still exists in Muslim countries. It still exists in lots of places. Okay, Christianity is the main thing that's able to get rid of slavery. It's about the only thing. Okay, let's do Douglas MacArthur. History fails to record a single precedent in which nations subject to moral decay have not passed into decline. There either has to be a spiritual awakening to overcome the moral lapse, or there will be progressive deterioration. And he's right, MacArthur said it. Basically, America's either going to have a Christian reawakening, or it's going to go into communism and slavery. It's obvious. It's so obvious, it's not even funny. And that's what's happening in Europe. In Europe, because they let themselves drift away from God, became more secular, they now are getting their butts kicked, and they are being cited. Okay, that's the punishment for not maintaining high levels of religion. It's just a fact. This has been known since the Old Testament of the Bible. This is what happens to a population. Religion means legari, to ligate, to tie together. If the people are not tied together, an outsider comes in and beats the crap out of them. That's how history always goes. Okay? And the people that become so stupid, they don't even realize they're being you know what I'm saying, cited nowadays. It's like amazing. They're like walking retards. Dinosaurs going extinct and not even knowing they're going extinct. Okay, Will Durant. A great civilization is not conquered from without until it has destroyed itself from within. Renaissance scholars taught man to celebrate life rather than brood about death. Okay, so a couple things here. Civilization, the West is first of all being destroyed from within with all this multiculturalism, diversity, fear of racism and all this other stuff, and feminization to make it not respect itself so it'll just give up, to switch out its real museums for modern art nonsense. Okay, Renaissance scholars. I do like the fact that Renaissance said, let us make the most of life, not just brood about death. But the Renaissance was far more Christian than is led on by a lot of people. The Medicis had a little bit more of this emphasis on classicism, the ancient Greeks and Romans, but it was intensely Christian. Just take a look at Savonarola down the street from the Medicis if you want to have a better understanding of it. Okay, Joseph McCarthy. He said, today we are engaged in a final all-out battle between communistic atheism and Christianity. Yeah, that's actually true. The amazing thing about it is, in my experience, about 95% of Christians don't even know that it's happening. They're just like, they've been so dumbed down by the fluoride in the water, the aluminum in the water, that they're like not even aware, gee, our history's being erased, we're going extinct. Oh, really? Sad, I'm like that Herodotus quote, to understand what is happening and have no ability to change it. Thomas McCullough, history has to be burned into the imagination before it can be received by reason. George Santayana, those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. It's kind of a repeat on Edmund Burke. Let's see here. Oh, this is Orwell. If all the records told the same tale, then the lie had passed into history and become the truth. He who controls the past controls the future, and who controls the present controls the past. All that was needed was an unending series of victories over your own memory, reality control, newspeak, doublethink. When one knew that any document was due for destruction or even saw a scrap of waste paper lying about, it was an automatic action to lift the flap of the nearest memory hole and drop it in, whereupon it would be whirled away on a current of warm air to the enormous furnaces which were hidden somewhere in the recesses of the building. This is Orwell. Okay, now this is Milan Kundera. He says the first step in liquidating a people is to erase its memory, destroy its books, its culture, its history. Then have someone write new books, manufacture a new culture, invent a new history. Before long, that nation will begin to forget what it is and what it was. The struggle of man against power is the struggle of memory against forgetting. That's the USA right there. The big billion-dollar perverts figured out how to take over the USA. Simply de-educate the population, make them think their own history was disgrace and bad, their own achievements were worthless, and then feminize them, and you could destroy an entire country. And that's exactly what happened. And as a final push, import a bunch of invaders of men of the age of military and just have them destroy the place. Get ones from places where they hate the place. Okay, Paul Johnson, quote now, Walter Benjamin argued in his Theses on Philosophy of History that politics was not only a struggle to control the present, and in so doing to control the future, but also to control the record of the past. He insisted that not even the dead will be safe in their graves from the fascists if he wins. Yep, they're going to rewrite history, so the achievements of the dead will be obliterated as well to make the place look bad until the commies came along. Arthur Koestler, the most persistent sound which reverberates through history is the beating of drums, war drums. Paul Johnson, again, man owes his humanity to the notion of God, and if this notion disappears from his thoughts and his vocabulary, the humanity would disappear too. Man without God is a doomed creature. The history of the 20th century proves the view that as the vision of God fades, we first become mere clever monkeys, and then we exterminate one another. That's Paul Johnson. Cardinal Newman wrote, to be deep in history is to cease to be Protestant. Yeah. Catholic Church goes all the way back to Christ. It's pretty obvious. Okay, here's C.S. Lewis. God made us. He invented us as a man invents an engine. A car is made to run on petrol, and it would not run properly on anything else. Now God designed the human machine to run on himself. He himself is the fuel our spirits were designed to burn, or the food our spirits were designed to feed on. There is no other. That is why it is just no good asking God to make us happy in our own way without bothering about religion. God cannot give us happiness and peace apart from himself because it is not there. There is no such thing. This is the key to history. Terrific energy is expended. Civilizations are built up. Excellent institutions are devised. But each time something goes wrong, some fatal flaw always brings the selfish and cruel people to the top, and it all slides back into misery and ruin. In fact, the machine conks. It seems to start up all right and runs a few yards, and then it breaks down. They are trying to run it on the wrong fuel. This is what Satan has done to us humans. Yeah, basically, Christ wants his children to be happy. Satan wants slaves. Okay, hope you found that helpful.